What's going on, you guys? I'm back once again. Said I'm back because Cade's not able to make it this week. He's got some other things going on, but it's Thanksgiving week, so I don't expect him to be able to make it every time. But just jumping in because next week is a very important week of college football. But before we get to that, college basketball. So we're about a week and a half, 2 weeks in. New AP poll came out. So the Kentucky Wildcats, y'all know, my team, falls to 15. Tennessee, after the one loss to Colorado, they dropped to 22. UCLA, they dropped 2 games, I believe. They dropped to 19. And then Michigan State goes from unranked to 12th. So they've had some big wins. I completely understand the reasoning behind them being ranked so high now. So it's well-deserved. Getting into my team a little bit, Kentucky basketball. So I got a little bit of a rant. So obviously we lost to Michigan State last week. Talked about that a little bit. We lost to Gonzaga yesterday. It's Monday now. Played on Sunday night. Now we're 3-2 with 2 losses to Michigan State, Gonzaga. 2 good teams. But here's where the rant comes in. This is Kentucky basketball. This is not supposed to be our standard. What happened to Gonzaga? Us showing up. Starting the game, at one point it was 13-1 on rebounds. Rebounds, I understand some of them you can't help. That's a lot of effort. And we showed up, no effort. And it just felt like we never had a chance to win that game. Cal used to say, we come to your town, beat your team, y'all have a t-shirt out, y'all sell out, we beat y'all, go home, blah, blah, blah. It's not like that anymore. I don't remember the exact stat, but it's something like 39% since 2015 is our winning percentage on the road versus ranked opponents, and that's not normal. When Cal first got here, the first 6-7 years, it was kind of, you're expected to win every game. Obviously, you have some off nights, but up until the 17-18 season, I would say it was like that. It was like you expected every game, no matter who you were playing, you were going to win it, and it's just not like that anymore. A bunch of people were blaming it on Cal not being an X's and O's guy, just being a recruiter, but I honestly, after rewatching the game last night, watched it almost 3 times now, I don't think it's that. I think he drew up some great plays. We weren't able to hit shots. It honestly seemed like some of our guys didn't even want to be in the game. So I don't know what needs fixed with that, if there's stuff that needs to happen inside the program, but it seems like the players aren't motivated, they're not giving effort, and it seems like they don't even want to be there. But it's a sad time to be a Kentucky basketball fan. It just doesn't feel the same right now. But I'm nowhere near giving up. Never going to give up on the Cats. But Cal did say it'll be a rocky start. Don't be alarmed if it's not the best beginning of the season, because he said that he'll have this team ready for March. That's where it truly matters. It's just weird having 2 losses in November. It doesn't feel like Kentucky. But we'll leave it at that. We'll see how it goes from here on out. But it's been good competition so far. It's hard to win on the road at Gonzaga, but I just expected a better fight to that. 88-72, I believe, was the final. So it was mainly a poor first half, if you all haven't watched it. But yeah, so with that being said, let's get into some college football. So this is some cool news right here. So when Texas and Oklahoma joined the SEC, Greg Sankey, the SEC, I don't know if he's president or commissioner or whatever he is, but he announces there will be no divisions and no pods. So we've talked about that before. We like the pods idea, but there will be none of that. So each team will have 3 permanent teams. So kind of like the pod system, but you'll play every other team 2 years. So instead of playing every 6 years, how it is now, we'll add them and we'll play every other team every 2 years. So we'll play Alabama every other year. So our schedule is definitely going to be tougher. But I would assume it'll be, if I had to guess our opponents right now, I would say South Carolina, Tennessee, Vanderbilt. That's who I would go with, and it's not written in stone yet. We won't know until, it'll be a little bit, probably until they are about to join. So definitely more news on that coming, and we'll get Cade's thoughts on that too. I'm kind of a fan of it, just because it'll be tougher for an SEC team to make the playoff, but your level of competition is a lot higher. And I think with us playing the schools like Arkansas and Alabama and Texas A&M, like the big names like that, every other year, it's going to be a recruiting piece as well. So I like the idea. Let's get into some Week 12 of college football. This was an exciting week. We talked about it last week. A lot of season-changing games. If teams lost these certain games, they have no chance of being in the playoff. And the first one is TCU. So we talked about TCU going to Baylor. It was kind of a trap game. They go in there, hit a game-winning field goal, and win 29-28. And if y'all haven't seen it, the game-winning field goal was TCU was out of timeouts, so they got the first down, and then or whatever the gain was, but the clock was still running. So the kicker had to run on. They had to hurry it all up, and yeah, it was just an awesome finish. So if y'all haven't seen that, definitely look that up. Another scare was Michigan. They avoided an upset versus Illinois. They win 19-17. Also a game-winning field goal on that one. The Arkansas Razorbacks destroyed Ole Miss, 42-27, and that made them bowl eligible. So what was interesting about that game was 42-6 was the score going into the fourth. So it was more of a blowout than what the score shows. 42-27 is the final, but they dominated. And I know that was a big win for the Razorbacks after kind of a disappointing season so far. But yeah, that's just awesome for their program. Then we got number 13, UNC drops a game at home. We've talked about them, hyped them up all season, and they drop a game at home to Georgia Tech, 21-17. And then lastly, we've got a big upset. Navy upsets number 17 UCF, 17-14, but they didn't complete a single pass in that game. So I think it's interesting that Navy, I think they threw one pass and they didn't complete it. So I think it's a bad loss for UCF with giving up that. I mean, it's 17, but still a lot of points without a pass being thrown on you. So now we've got the big games. So we've got College Game Day from last week. It was Montana at Montana State. I think when they were doing College Game Day, it was like 2 degrees. The crowd was crazy, though. Got to give props to the Montana State crowd. Rowdy fans, for sure. Montana State going in was a 1.5-point favorite. They covered, to say the least. The final was 55-21. I guessed 51-38 Montana State. Cade guessed Montana, 56-48. And Montana State won. Like I said, 55-21. Dominant running performance for the Bobcats. I watched a little bit of it, and they were just running all over them. 439 rushing yards for them. Next game, number 7 USC was playing at number 16 UCLA. USC was a 2.5-point favorite. I took the underdogs. I took UCLA 34-28, and Cade took them. He took USC 41-30. USC pulled it out 48-45. USC picked it off on the final drive with a little over a minute left. That kind of sealed the deal. But Caleb Williams was the star of that game. He had 502 yards total, most by any player in the Rivalry's history. And he had 3 touchdowns to go with that. But DTR on the other end, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, quarterback for UCLA, had 384 yards and 6 touchdowns total. So he balled out. Other than that pick at the end, he played a great game. Then we got my Cats. We're hosting the Dogs. Number 1 Georgia was coming into Lexington. I actually went to this game. Definitely wasn't as bad as a game as I was expecting. Georgia was a 22.5-point favorite, and the Cats covered that. So I took Georgia 45-21. He took Georgia 42-16. Final was Georgia 16-6. I'm as happy as you can be after a loss. Both sides of the ball played great. Held Georgia to 1 touchdown. At halftime, they had 9, scored 1 touchdown in the second half, and defense just balled out. So, offensive line is my key takeaway, really. They played their best game of the season. I think it was also awesome that Will Levis had a few runs, it looked like last year, where he was able to run it a lot on different teams on numerous occasions. He hasn't really ran it this year. And then we threw it all over the field. So that was a huge takeaway. That was awesome. Skangarell's play calling in the second half of that game was the best it's been the whole season. If he would have called like that second half the whole time, it would have been a completely different season this whole year. There's certain games. I saw a stat that if we would just score 25 in every single game this season, we would be 9-1 right now. But can't take it back now. But if Rich Skangarell could call it like that, next week we could maybe hang 40+, and he can maybe keep his job. it definitely helped me a little bit, like gain some trust in him. But yeah, it was a great game. We had Will threw a pick in the red zone, and then we missed a field goal. So this was a closer game than what even the score shows. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I'm not upset about it. Will Levis had 206 yards passing and 1 touchdown. And then Barry Brown was the MVP of this game for our side, of course. 145 receiving yards and 1 touchdown. So, yeah, Barry played well. Will played very, very good. Tight ends looked great. Offensive line looked great, like I said. Obviously, Chris ran the ball well. The play calling as a whole was awesome. You could just see a completely different game in that game and the last few smart play calls. But defense was amazing, like I said. So Georgia was on the 1-yard line. They went for it on 4th and goal from the 1, and we were able to stop them. Offense had a 99-yard drive coming back down the field, and that was the first 99-yard drive Kirby Smart's ever given up in his career. So we were the first to do it. So that was an awesome drive. But yeah, we were testing their DBs, and for the most part, it worked. So I hope we can do that going forward for Louisville and the bowl game. Then we had number 10, Utah. The Utes were going into Eugene and playing number 12, Oregon. Oregon was a 3-point favorite. I took Oregon 37-24, and he took Oregon 52-38. The final was Oregon 20-17. Both defenses balled out. 3 turnovers from both sides. So it was a very equal game, statistically and on the scoreboard. Oregon is now one win away from clinching a spot in the Pac-12 championship versus USC, I believe. That could be wrong, but I think it's against USC. So then we've got number 5, Tennessee, went to South Carolina. Tennessee was a 21.5-point favorite. I took Tennessee 51-21. Cade took the Vols. Tennessee 49-24. So going into it, we thought Tennessee would hang up a lot of points. They did, not going to lie. But I kind of called it in the last podcast. I was like, I'm not saying they'll lose this game, but South Carolina's not a team to look over. I didn't think it was going to happen like this. South Carolina upsets number 5, Tennessee, 63-38. South Carolina looked dominant. It doesn't take away from our loss, but it definitely softens it up a little bit. Spencer Rattler had the game of his career. This is the game that people thought his career was going to be like. He was 30 of 37, 438 yards, and 6 touchdowns. 0 interceptions to go with that. He looked great. The whole team balled out. Receivers were deadly. I don't know. I'm not saying they'll beat Clemson, but there's a chance. I definitely think it'll be a closer game than what everybody thought in Week 4 or Week 5. But some sad news. Even coming from a Kentucky fan, y'all know I'm not the biggest. I don't root for Tennessee, but this is a special talent that has had his career cut short. Hendon Hooker tears his ACL against the Gamecocks. Definitely pray for him. Hopefully he has a speedy recovery. Like I said, just a special talent, great player, and he's had such a phenomenal year. So he will not be playing against Vanderbilt or in the bowl game. And I think that'll be the end of his college career. So definitely thoughts and prayers to him. I'm assuming it'll be Joe Milton, which is the backup. I'm assuming he'll start the rest of the season. But that's just a huge blow for him. But yeah, so definitely keep him in your thoughts. So one last thing that happened, I think it was this afternoon. So as we're doing this, it's November 21st, Monday, and this happened about an hour or two ago. So John Sokoloff, I'm not real familiar with who he is, but he tweeted out, breaking, Ole Miss head coach Lane Kiffin plans to step down as the Rebels head coach Friday and head to Auburn to become the Tigers' next head coach, according to sources. Didn't say who his sources were, and Lane Kiffin fired back about an hour later and said, "That's news to me, John. Nice sources." But I don't think it's crazy that he would go to Auburn, and I don't think it's out of the question just because he tweeted that. Lincoln Riley did the same thing. He didn't say anything about going to USC. He didn't say anything about leaving, or he said that he wasn't going to be leaving Oklahoma, and it happened. So I think we'll see. I don't think he would leave in the middle of the season, honestly. But yeah, I could see Lane Kiffin going there. If I had to call it right now, Lane Kiffin to Auburn, and then Hugh Freeze from Liberty to Ole Miss. So that's my prediction. I know Cade would definitely have some thoughts on that because he's said multiple times that he hates Lane Kiffin for good reasons. But yeah, Lane Kiffin's a great coach, great offensive mind. Can't take that away from him, and I'd like to see him at Auburn, honestly. So going into this week, the final week of the season, we've got Rivalry Week. This is the best week of the year. So we've got the Iron Bowl. Auburn at Alabama. Y'all know the stakes of this game. This is a huge game. In the state of Alabama, you're either Auburn or you're Alabama. And they don't talk to each other all week. This is like the biggest day of the year. And Auburn's down. So with that being said, Alabama's a 21.5 point favorite. Do I think they cover? I don't know. If I'm predicting right now, I would say no, just because Alabama only hung up 34 last week. So I'm still taking Alabama, though. 41-28 is my prediction. And then we've got the Governor's Cup. Louisville at Kentucky. Kentucky's a 3-point favorite. I'm taking the Cats 37-14. Last year, Louisville was favored. We beat them 52-21. The last 3 games against the Cards, we have won 153-44. That is dominance, and we've got to keep it going. I've been nervous going into this game. Louisville's a great team. Like I said last week, I think they lead the country in sacks per game. And our O-line has struggled all year. But this is the game, if any, that they've got to step up and prove who the Kentucky Wildcats are and prove that this season wasn't a fluke with the games that we've won, as many people will say. But we just need this win, get back on track, and we cannot let the Cards down I-64 come beat us. So that's a huge game for us. We need Will to go off like he did last year. I think he had 4 or 5 rushing touchdowns last year. He probably won't have that many this year. Like I said, he's not been running as much. But, yeah, we'll see how that game goes. Need a big win for the Cats. It's at home, so we've got to get it done. Then we've got number 9, Tennessee at Vanderbilt. Tennessee's a 14-point favorite. Like I said, Joe Milton is a quarterback. But we've talked about it. They're not going to take a step off. It's going to be the Vols 49-31. They're still going to put up points. Joe Milton's a great backup for them to have. Cade loves him. I think he just fits the system perfect. He knows it. And I think Vandy's going to score. I don't think it's going to be a blowout, but 49-31 is what I predict. And a big game, number 13, Notre Dame, travels to L.A. and plays number 5, USC. USC is a 5-point favorite. So this is Lincoln Riley's first time as a head coach in this rivalry, and it's Marcus Freeman's first time for Notre Dame as a head coach in this rivalry. And I'm going with USC. They've got so many weapons all over the field. Like I said, Caleb Williams, Jordan Addison. I'm pretty sure Travis Dye's out. But they're loaded with running backs right now. I just don't see a world where Notre Dame goes in there and beats them. So I'm taking USC 45-31. And then lastly, College Game Day is headed to the game. For those of you that don't know, it's Ohio State versus Michigan. Number 2, Ohio State is hosting number 3, Michigan. Ohio State's a 7.5-point favorite. This is as big, if not bigger, than the Iron Bowl between Auburn and Alabama. This game, if you all have not seen it, Ohio State will cover up every M on their campus, on any memorials, on any like dorms that may say. I've seen one that says Mason Hall. They'll cover up that M. It's game week. The game. This is the biggest stakes that I could remember in this game. Last year was very, very big. But this year, once again, is the winner is very likely to make the playoff. And the loser, depending on how bad the loss is, they'll be gone. So number 2, Ohio State versus number 3, Michigan. I'm taking Ohio State 48-38. They get it done in Columbus, and they just travel on. They win the Big Ten championship, and they get that 2 seed in the college football playoff. So with that being said, I don't think Michigan's out necessarily, but it depends on what USC does. So the playoff picture's changed. Tennessee's out. So if I had to guess right now, I would say number 1, Georgia. Number 2, Ohio State. Number 3, TCU, as long as they can keep getting it done. Number 4, USC. If this game's close, I can see them slipping Michigan in front of USC, keeping USC at 5, and that would be the playoff. Once again, it would be Georgia, Michigan. That would not be fair. Georgia would run the table. And then I think Ohio State, TCU would be a great game. It would really show what the Big 12 is made of, show what the Big 10 is made of. But yeah, so if I had to predict it right now, I would say USC will get into that last spot. So yeah, my final prediction before Week 13, 1 Georgia, 2 Ohio State, 3 TCU, 4 USC. So we've got SEC, Big 10, Big 12, Pac-12. I mean, I'm here for it. I think that'll be the playoff picture. What do you all think? Comment below. If you think there's any scenarios that other teams get in. But I think that's the most logical if Michigan is losing pretty bad. It could be a great game, and Michigan could win this game. Then it would just switch Ohio State, Michigan for me. I think Michigan goes 2, TCU 3, USC 4. But yeah, a lot of stakes on this game. This is the biggest game of the season for both teams and in the country. So yeah, I'm hyped for it. So like I said at the beginning, Thanksgiving week. Y'all have a great Thanksgiving. Have a great time with the family. Enjoy all the food and enjoy the weather. Enjoy the NFL football on Thanksgiving, and the Egg Bowl is on Thanksgiving. That's not on here, but Mississippi State versus Ole Miss is Thursday. So thank you all once again for tuning in to yet again another podcast. Y'all have a safe week. I'll say it for Cade, Vol Nation, stay loud. Y'all need a big win versus Vanderbilt to get back on track, and then the Cats need a big win versus the Cardinals to keep this season rolling. So thank you all. Y'all have a great week. Stay safe. Peace.